"You're just the IT guy." My family laughed, so I ended the $62,000 in support I'd been giving them and said, "All right, then manage without me." At my parents' golden anniversary dinner, the man I'd hired to help my brother raised his glass and announced, loud enough for everyone to hear, "We all agreed, Jake keeps the memories. I get the 1.9 million lake house." My mother clapped. My father nodded. Maya added, "Fair is fair." No one looked in my direction. I didn't argue. I didn't even ask who "we all" referred to. I simply lifted my glass, let the quiet make its point, and replied, "Congratulations. I'll just take what belongs to me." Then I smiled, calm, as though the choice had already been made. I hadn't come to fight. I showed up out of routine, obligation, and maybe a bit of hope. I booked the venue, paid the $4,300 catering bill, covered the band because Dad said they couldn't swing it this month, and even ordered a custom cake with their wedding date written in gold. Yet in every speech, I wasn't acknowledged. As a son, as family, or even as support. I sat through their toasts and jokes and the laughter when my brother announced he never wanted the lake house anyway. No wife, no kids. What would he even do with it? Everyone laughed. Even Grandpa Joe looked away. I didn't. I ate my expensive filet, wiped my mouth, and stayed silent because I could feel something shifting inside me. Not anger, not pain, something colder and clearer. A mechanism that activates after years of being tolerated but not valued. They didn't want me there. They wanted what I provided, so I left early and quietly, no scene. Just a smile, a nod to the waiter, and a message to my assistant. Tomorrow morning, calculate every asset I funded in that house. They wouldn't expect consequences because, to them, I was always the reliable one, the fixer, the donor, the background support. But that night, I stopped being invisible and started keeping record. I didn't sleep, not from stress. Those emotions faded years ago. I stayed awake thinking about patterns, not individual moments. Because the lake house was just another example of how they divided everything into what I gave versus what I got. I remembered paying the $9,800 for my sister's wedding banquet. When I asked why she didn't tell me beforehand, she laughed and said, "You don't have a spouse or kids. You might as well do something useful." I remembered driving 6 hours for Christmas only to learn my seat was given to a neighbor since she's alone this year. My mother said, "You can just sit in the kitchen." The kitchen! And when I went along with it quietly, my sister texted, "Wow, can't handle being overlooked?" That night, I checked my banking app and froze the mortgage support I'd been covering, along with their streaming accounts and shared Prime. I remembered the text I got at 9:04 p.m. "We talked about it. You've always been a failure. You ruin every holiday and gathering. We don't need you." That was their idea of closure. So the lake house wasn't shocking. It was simply the last confirmation. I had never been part of the family. Only the funding, the emotional labor, the tech support, and the backup plan. I spent $12,400 on landscaping so their anniversary party could even happen, yet I wasn't invited. When I asked why, my aunt said, "It's just immediate family. I'm sure you understand." When I cut the payments, my father texted, "Don't be dramatic." That was always the line. Don't be dramatic. As if decades of quiet cooperation turned into immaturity the moment I stopped giving. I remembered canceling my sister's wedding contribution, not out of revenge, but because she treated my money as hers, as if I didn't matter. They always framed it as love and support, But what they meant was that I was convenient. I stayed silent. I never said no. And I didn't, for years, because I wanted to be seen. I thought if I gave enough, fixed enough, helped enough, eventually they'd see me as more than the one who messed up. But they only saw usefulness. I pay, they applaud. I give, they divide it among themselves. I show up, they belittle me at events, gatherings, dinners, and milestones. I funded the performance, the illusion of an ideal family with an imperfect son who asked for little and contributed more. They never thanked me. They assumed I'd always show up, send money, and pretend not to notice. But I noticed when I was hurt. They ignored it. How my mother told people, "It's fine, he still has one good arm," as if that made everything acceptable. My brother joked and called me RoboCop every Thanksgiving, like I was some party gimmick. My father said, "We're not walking on eggshells just because you had one bad year." One bad year. That's how he described the decade I spent rebuilding my life. That was the pattern. They didn't think I mattered, yet they depended on me. They wanted my presence without acknowledging me, my help without the human behind it. For a long time, I thought they didn't realize how much I gave, but they did. They relied on it. That's why the lake house wasn't shocking. It was simply the last piece of proof. And as I looked at the glass of whiskey in my hand that night, I made a decision. I decided I would no longer give them my money, my silence, or my identity. I would take everything back, because I wasn't the son returning home to fix things anymore. I was the son returning to turn the power off. I didn't make a scene the morning after the lake house announcement. I simply created a list of each room and item, not out of anger, but for accuracy. Everything I had purchased, installed, funded, or maintained over the years was mine again. By 9 a.m., I was in the driveway. My brother answered the door in workout shorts, holding a protein shake. He said nothing, just stood there, like someone realizing all the hidden pieces of the past were now visible. I started with the basics. The smart lock was removed in 3 minutes. Dad's sound system and the 65-inch OLED TV I bought so he could enjoy a proper movie setup were taken down. The central Wi-Fi mesh network I installed last year to prevent interruptions during my mother's Zoom calls was disconnected. The lighting app, the smart kitchen faucet, and remote access to the security cameras were all disabled. By lunchtime, the house felt unfamiliar. Not because anything was damaged, but because the systems they depended on, systems they barely knew existed, were gone. I wasn't acting out of revenge. I was being exact. The thermostat lost its remote settings. The refrigerator's touch panel shut off. The backup generator reverted to offline monitoring. Then I addressed the financial side. I logged into the mortgage account, removed my cosigner information, and requested a review. I already knew the result. They wouldn't qualify for the loan without the refinancing I secured for them 2 years earlier. Next were the phone plans, all 5 lines under my name. I transferred full responsibility. If they didn't accept within 72 hours, the lines would deactivate. I logged into the streaming services and canceled everything. Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Amazon Prime, even the shared password manager were all disabled. Their Amazon orders stopped. Their autofill passwords failed. The living room TV displayed nothing but static. Around 2 p.m., my brother finally spoke. "This is crazy." I didn't answer. I just unplugged the router and walked out. The next step was their business accounts. For more than a decade, my parents' company had relied on my firm's infrastructure, cloud backups, encrypted email, firewall systems, and software licenses. They had never been charged for any of it. I accessed the gateway and closed their profile. Clean, professional, final. I left a message on the dashboard. This system was maintained free of charge for 11 years. As of today, it has been decommissioned. Thank you. They didn't understand how dependent they were on me until everything stopped functioning. By 3:30 p.m., the clinic's front desk messaged, "We're completely locked out. Please help." I didn't reply. I forwarded it to a coworker and told him to bill the full emergency rate. Then I drove to begin the full cleanup of the lake house. I never wanted the property, but I had paid for half the repairs: new dock, upgraded water filtration, and guest cabin renovations came from my accounts because I was helping. I downloaded the invoices and highlighted every transaction. After that, I contacted a lawyer. He didn't hesitate. "Do you want to reclaim or recover costs?" he asked. "Both," I said. He began drafting a claim, quietly and professionally. No drama, just documentation. I returned to the house. The dining table set, which cost $3,800, was itemized and removed. The patio chairs I purchased during a family emergency were loaded into my vehicle. The espresso machine I gifted them 2 years ago, one my mother said made her feel noticed, was wrapped and packed with care. At one point, my brother attempted to stand in the doorway. "You're not taking the floors, man." I only smiled and kept walking. I had my receipts, literally. By sunset, the house felt empty. Everything was still physically there, but stripped of what I had contributed. Only one thing remained: a wooden box in the back of the closet. Inside were old photos, cards I had written, hospital bracelets, a dried flower from my sister's high school dance, and a medal from the time when I still had 2 hands. On top was a folded drawing I made at 7 years old. "My family," it read, stick figures smiling. They had kept it, even after everything. I stared at it for a long time before closing the box and leaving it on the dining table. It was the only item I didn't take with me because I didn't want sentiment. I wanted space. That night, I drove home and slept better than I had in years. No calls, no texts, no guilt, just quiet. I finally understood something. I hadn't destroyed the family. I had simply unplugged myself from the system that depended on me to function. They didn't call right away. Not the next morning, not the day after. The silence stretched for 4 full days. But it wasn't calm. It was tension, like a pipe swelling from inside until it eventually bursts. It finally did. Day 5, 8:17 a.m. The first group message arrived from my mother, father, and brother. "You're overreacting. This was a family decision. We thought you'd understand. This doesn't have to be permanent. Let's fix it. You're acting like a stranger." I didn't respond. An hour later, my mother sent a private text. "I'm ashamed that you're trying to punish us instead of talking. This isn't you. You're not a monster." The tone said everything. No apology, no accountability, just denial, fear, and projection. They weren't sorry. They were frightened. Because for the first time in years, I had removed the safety net. Their safety net. The fixer, the backup, the one who kept everything running. By lunchtime, my voicemail was full. My father sent the same message twice in a row. "Just call me. Don't do anything stupid." And by stupid, they meant something final. They knew I wasn't bluffing anymore. Things worsened by that evening. Aunt Gloria posted a vague Facebook status. Some people will throw away blood over ego. Subtle, but obvious enough. From there, the smear campaign escalated fast. My cousin Tasha messaged me. They're saying you're having a breakdown. She added a screenshot from the family group chat, one I was no longer part of. My brother had written, "He's been acting differently lately. We need to give him space. He's not thinking clearly." Then my mom added, "This is what happens when you bottle things up for years." He was always distant. They weren't looking for sympathy. They were rewriting history. Suddenly, I wasn't being assertive. I was unstable. I wasn't setting boundaries. I was spiraling. And still, not a single person reached out to ask what actually happened. They just defaulted to the familiar story, the quiet one, the odd one, the one they could blame. But I was no longer that version of myself. I had become the disruption they didn't expect. That night, a call came from a blocked number. I almost ignored it. It was Harper, my brother's girlfriend, and her voice was shaky. "They're trying to bury you," she said. She explained that she overheard a discussion. My parents had basically held a meeting, choosing specific terms and crafting a timeline to make it look like I had been unstable for years. They wanted to frame the wedding cancellation, the streaming accounts, and the company systems as signs of mental decline, not deliberate decisions. Harper said even the therapist they once hired was being pulled in. My mother contacted her, asking whether she had ever noticed warning signs. That's when I understood. They weren't trying to reconcile. They were trying to invalidate me, to undo everything by labeling me as unwell. Then came the emails. 2 anonymous messages were sent to my workplace, hinting at emotional instability and referencing concerning behavior. I traced the IP addresses, one from the public library near my parents' home, the other from a residential connection. I didn't need further proof. They were panicking, and panicked people stop hiding their tracks. Still, I responded to nothing. Not texts, not posts, not calls. I let silence say what I needed it to. I knew what was coming next. Confrontation. They showed up on Sunday afternoon, my mother, father, and brother, standing outside my door as if it were a holiday visit. They didn't knock. They just waited. 3 actors waiting for their cue. I let them stand there for 2 minutes before opening the door. I didn't invite them in. I didn't smile. I simply said, "You have 5 minutes." My mother started crying immediately, not out of sorrow, but from exposure. This wasn't regret. It was panic. She launched into a speech about misunderstandings and how everything had escalated too quickly. My father added his usual line, "You've always been intense, but this isn't you." My brother stayed quiet, jaw clenched. I listened. Then I spoke. "You're not here because you care. You're here because the power's off, and you don't know how to function in the dark." Silence. I looked at my mother. "You let them claim I was unstable." I looked at my father. "You watched it happen." I looked at my brother. "And you started it." That's when he broke. "You're throwing away your own family for what? Pride?" I almost laughed. "No, I'm removing you for my survival." They weren't used to this version of me. The one who didn't flinch, who didn't need their approval to end the conversation. My mother tried one final line. "We're your family." I answered plainly, "No, you were. Now you're just people I used to financially support." Then I closed the door. They didn't knock again. They didn't yell. They just stood there, shocked, confused, and realizing the system they built around me had collapsed, and they had no idea how to rebuild it without me. They didn't expect me to go public afterward. That was their last hope, that I'd stay quiet, that even if I withdrew the money, the support, the systems, I would still protect their image. They assumed my silence was loyalty. It wasn't. It was restraint. I opened the vault. The first post was simple, a short caption. For those asking why I went silent, here's what that silence was covering. Attached were screenshots, the group chat where my mother said I had always been unstable, my brother calling me a sunk cost, the canceled invoices I had paid, and the defamatory email traced back to their network. No commentary, no hashtags, no anger, just information. Within an hour, the post had been shared over 300 times by friends, coworkers, and even distant relatives. Then I uploaded the second file, footage from my doorbell camera. In the video, my mother stood in the driveway while my father yelled, threw bricks, and swung branches. These were the same people claiming I was losing control. The same ones shouting, "We gave you everything." I blurred my face, not because it was required, but because I wanted the focus to stay on the facts rather than retaliation. The final upload was a PDF titled Receipts. It contained bank statements showing payments I made for their mortgage, streaming services, wedding expenses, and tuition. Email confirmations with my signature approving home improvements, travel, and business systems. Legal documents verifying I had separated myself from their debts. No edits, no explanations, just evidence. Then I shut my laptop. I didn't check comments or reactions. The truth wasn't meant for them. It was for everyone they had tried to mislead. By evening, my inbox filled with messages from old acquaintances, coworkers, and cousins. One stood out. Tasha wrote, "You didn't destroy the family. You revealed it." Another came from an assistant at my uncle's dental office. "So you were the one keeping everything running?" We had no idea. "They always said you were just the IT guy. Sorry." That one felt different, because that had always been the family story. I was the troubled one, the helper, the unhappy one who needed purpose. They didn't realize I had been the foundation. And when I stepped back, everything collapsed. There was no revenge, just balance. The next day, my mother deleted her social media accounts. Back one, now. My father's email said an automatic reply, out of office indefinitely. My brother went quiet online, removed posts, and made his profile private. It wasn't shame, it was exposure. They couldn't rewrite the narrative anymore, not with the evidence public. And that's when everything shifted. They didn't just lose a son. They lost the version of the story they relied on. Eventually, they asked to meet one last time. No group text, no pressure, just a short email from my father. "If you have 10 minutes, we'd like to see you." No drama, just closure. It sounded rehearsed, edited, and intentionally neutral, like someone had polished it for them. I didn't reply, but I went. Same house, same driveway. The same front door I had walked away from months earlier. My brother wasn't there. Only my parents, sitting in the living room like it was some odd therapy session. My mother stood up immediately, her eyes already cloudy. My father stayed seated. "Thank you for coming," she said politely, as if we were strangers negotiating a contract. I didn't speak. I nodded once and sat down. The room looked overly tidy, almost staged. The fireplace was on, even though it was July. 2 mugs sat on the coffee table. One read, "World's Best Son." My mother pushed it toward me as if that alone could reset everything. I didn't touch it. My father cleared his throat and began. We've reflected on what happened and what we said. We want to make it clear. We never meant to make you feel unwanted. He sounded like someone trying not to admit liability, as if his words had been prepared carefully, not sincerely. My mother followed. You've always been strong and capable. We didn't realize how much pressure you were under. They didn't realize. That was their theme. We overlooked you. We used you. We didn't notice. I let them talk. They expressed regret about how things appeared. They were saddened the family was fractured. They spoke about healing, rebuilding trust, and starting again. They used every phrase except the crucial ones. We were wrong. We were unkind. We treated you like a resource, not a son. Finally, my father added softly, "We miss you." Then they waited. I gave them something they didn't expect. I stood up, calm and steady. You don't miss me, I said. You miss the system. You miss the financial support. You miss the version of me who paid, stayed quiet, and let you pretend it was love. My mother gasped. My father looked stunned. I continued. You don't miss me. You miss what I provided. Free labor, silent agreement, automatic yeses. I turned to my mother. You allowed them to lie about me. You let them call me unstable. And when I said nothing, you called it peace. It wasn't peace. I was getting through you. Then to my father. You taught me that loyalty meant obedience, that love required sacrifice. That wasn't love. It was convenience. They tried to interrupt. I kept going. You can't ask for forgiveness after years of casual harm. You can't pretend this was confusion. It was a transaction, and I finally canceled my subscription. My mother began crying loudly, not quiet sadness, but dramatic sobbing, as if seeking automatic pardon. I didn't move. She whispered, "But we're still your parents." And I said, "You were. You used that title like an unlimited credit card. It's maxed out now, and you're responsible for the debt." My father stood up. He looked older, smaller, almost collapsed. He asked, "Is that it? Are you just done?" I looked him in the eye. No, I was done the night you traded my place for cheap convenience. This isn't a question mark. I'm just switching off the lights. They had nothing else to say. I didn't wait for a farewell. I walked past the outdated framed photos, past the still-lit fireplace meant for show, past the mug claiming "World's Best Son." I closed the door gently. No noise, just a quiet end. That night, my mother sent one last message. You will regret this one day. Family is forever. I replied with the truth they never expected. No, family is earned, and you returned it in pieces. Then I blocked her number and slept. No guilt, no noise, no weight. Because I didn't just refuse them. I finally chose myself for the first time in 20 years.